Hello, critics, non-critics, and friends. Welcome to the Film Optix podcast, where we take a glance into blockbusters, indie films, and everything in between. I'm your host, Christian, and as always, I'm joined by my good friend / my co-host, Devin. And today we're here to break down and give our insights on the latest Ti West horror film, the second Ti West film to hit theaters this year, and that is titled Pearl. So for those who don't know what this movie is, this is a prequel to Ti West's earlier film that released earlier this year, titled X, not EX, just the letter X. So we were very, very excited to just jump back into this trilogy, and knowing that it actually will become a trilogy now, because right before Pearl premiered at Toronto International Film Festival, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Devin, but that is around the time that Ti West and A24 released the third film, which will be coming, it just says coming soon, which is titled Maxine with 3 X's, which is the name of the character from the movie X. It kind of follows her story after the events of the film X. So it's a lot to unpack here, and I know I just said a bunch of mumbo jumbo that you guys probably didn't understand, but regardless, we are here to give our thoughts and our reactions on the movie Pearl. It is a slasher film. We've been having a lot of great horror movies this year, a lot of great slasher movies all together, but I'm going to shut up here for a second. Devin, how have you been, man? We're doing a late night recording. We kind of just hopped on the mics and said,
Friday night, feeling all right.
Yeah, boy. Heading back to Texas. All my exes live in Texas.
Pearl got us feeling some type of way.
She definitely did, man. It is
something about that accent, just hypnotizing. That drawl.
Yeah, it's that Southern drawl, but it kind of reminds me of Troy Baker's Texas accent, because he is actually he is a Texan himself, and how he portrays Joel from The Last of Us, who's also from Texas. It's not like the super, like you get that super Southern drawl there. It's not like super thick. It's like it's just right. It's like right in the middle for Troy Baker for his like Texas accent. And I feel like it's the same way for Mia Goth playing Pearl in this movie. Even though Mia Goth is from the United Kingdom. I believe she is British. So yeah, these Brits they're taking over, man. Like some of the hardest working actors and actresses today. But yeah, you've been watching anything since Pearl, or have you just been pondering on Pearl?
Just got home.
You just got home. Oh my gosh, that is insane.
It was actually shot in New Zealand, which is crazy to think about because everything feels so Southern.
Does it? Oh, really? Yeah, I was wondering. I was like, you know what? I'm like, this area, this location is too lush and too green for Texas. I was wondering where they shot this film at, but that actually makes a lot of sense. New Zealand is a beautiful place to film many of films. Of course, Lord of the Rings was shot there. I don't know if I think they went back for The Hobbit, but I can't really remember. But yeah, so you just got out of the theater to see Pearl. I myself saw Pearl earlier today, and yeah, we're just going to talk about it here for everyone out there. So
I also just wanted to mention I loved her pronunciation of Europe. She just skipped right over that O. Just Europe. I want to go to Europe.
Europe.
Can we go to Europe, please?
Can we go to Europe, please?
Take me to Europe.
So which accent, drew you in? Was it the Southern drawl, or was it the German accent? That's my question.
German is not a very, very attractive accent. It's not very hypnotizing like Southern. Just not a very lovely language.
It is a very powerful.
It's very harsh.
Very passionate, I would say as well. Yeah, but definitely, the Southern drawl can't beat it whatsoever. But for all of our listeners out there, before we begin today's episode, you can listen to our podcast on podcast platforms around the internet. That includes Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and more. And if you are a new or seasoned listener to the show, we would love to hear from you guys. Follow us on Instagram and follow us on Twitter at FilmOptix. That is Optix with an X, or you can email us at filmoptix@gmail.com for any movie-related questions. So the way that this is gonna, go down, since this is hot off the press for both of us, and Pearl just hit theaters this weekend, which you should definitely go check out. And we'll actually kind of talk about how this works as a prequel and how people might be able to watch this maybe before watching X to see. That is a question.
I was just gonna say I would recommend X first. I think it makes this so much. It just makes it better.
It does. It feels, in a weird way, it fills in the gaps. It's almost like the Star Wars effect, where, you have the original trilogy, and then they went back into the prequel, and then they did the sequel. It seems that Ty West is following in those footsteps, but it seems that, this is just within one trilogy, you have, the past, present, and future, almost like the Fear Street trilogy, almost. I feel like that would probably be the closest comparison so far that we've gotten within recent years when it comes to horror movie trilogies, or just trilogies altogether within this realm. But yeah, I was wondering if people should or shouldn't, but we'll definitely get into it here in a bit. But just to let everyone know, since we are going to be diving into this, we're going to be giving our initial reactions first, then we're going to head into spoilers. Definitely going to let you guys know before we hit that mark. Then we're going to talk about some Easter eggs, then hit our final thoughts, and then our ratings. And then it's time to skedaddle on out of here. We're going to Texas. We got an Airbnb. I'm sure everything will work out just fine. So, Devin, are you ready to dive into our review?
Going to Europe.
We're going to Europe. Going to Europe, everybody. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we'll be right back after this introduction to Pearl.
Please, Lord, make me the biggest star the world has ever known, so that I may get far, far away from this place.
Caring for your family during these times is admirable. But you only get one take at this life.
If only they would just die.
Pardon?
Nothing.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, and we are back. You just heard a little snippet of the trailer from Pearl. Again, this movie is directed by Ty West himself and is written by Ty West and surprisingly Mia Goth, which I did not realize until, the credits were actually rolling during the beginning of this film.
Yeah, I was actually reading about that in the trivia section, and they mentioned that they were FaceTiming during a mandatory quarantine on the set of X. Somebody must have gotten sick or something, but they were in quarantine for 2 weeks, and they just kind of were FaceTiming and started writing this movie. And then they got the approval from A24 before X even started shooting. That's why they were able to shoot them simultaneously.
Nice. See, I'm wondering how Maxine is going to fit into all this. I don't know if he's already started filming that, because that was more of a teaser trailer that we got for Maxine for Pearl towards the end of X. That definitely felt more like a full-fledged trailer. We actually...
Yeah, I'm curious if that it's able to come out this year, or if that'll be more than likely next year.
If it came out this year, I would be like, Ty West is the man. He is.
I actually did want to give Ty West some credit here. I don't know if we talked much about him during our X review, but he's kind of been working horror for a while now. He's kind of just been indie, under the radar type of horror director. He's been hard at work. He's done quite a few things. He did a VHS segment. He did ABCs of Death. One of his first ones that I would highly recommend is called The House of the Devil. It was a 2009 horror movie that came out set in the 80s, and you can just feel how 80s it is, and it was great. But yeah, I'm glad to see he's finally broken out here, and he's got possibly one of the better horror trilogies we've seen in a while in our hands here, depending on how Maxine goes, and there's no reason to think it won't be as entertaining as these first two.
See, I did not know that. I do remember, I think we watched ABC of Death at your house when we were younger.
Yeah, that's a throwback to the high school days. That's when that came out.
And then VHS as well. I forgot which VHS we watched, but we definitely watched it growing up for sure, for what I can remember.
Yeah, he's been at it for a while now.
Oh man, that's props to you, Ty West. That is fantastic. And it's you can really see his love for horror within everything here. So yeah, just to get a little bit back on track here, the story is as follows. This is off of IMDb. So this is pretty much just a story of how Pearl became the vicious killer as she's seen in the movie X. And of course, the stars Mia Goth, Emma Jenkins-Purro, and David Corenswet as well. So I'm going to pass it over to Devin so he can give his initial reactions to Pearl, because he literally just got out of the theater and saw it. So his mind is more fresh than mine, only by a few hours. But Devin, what are your thoughts about this movie?
I think the main takeaway from this is just that Mia Goth is just a powerhouse. Like, this is a star-making movie and trilogy. It's just unbelievable to watch her work, especially just seeing the contrast between this character and Maxine from X. Like, just completely different types of people and different dialects and different ways of life, and she's able to pull both of them off so effortlessly, and it's just amazing to watch. And this movie just does not work without her. Like, she is this movie, and she puts it on her back and carries it all the way through. I was a little bit worried during the first half or so, because it's a very slow burn, similar to X, but even more so, I would say. I was actually starting to think at one point, I was like, I kind of wish they just did a Maxine story instead. Like, I'm just looking forward to that one. But then the movie turns and starts to pick up more, and Mia Goth just unleashes Pearl onto us and just never lets go, and you just can't look away. It's like she's magnetizing you. It's insane to think about this performance. Not a lot of kills as far as the slasher goes. I wouldn't say it's even a great horror movie. It's more like a character study, I would describe it as. I don't know if you want to compare it to X, but I'd say X is probably a little more entertaining, but this one just has this performance that is unforgettable, especially towards the end.
That's a very interesting point that you bring up there. As far as my initial reactions goes, and I'll get back to your point here in a second. I really did enjoy it. I do agree. It is more of a slow burn, but it is more of just like a character build, because from what we've seen from the movie X, and I do apologize if you haven't seen X yet, we're going to be kind of talking about a few spoilers here and there. Clearly it is the same house that they are using, which I thought was very clever. For some reason, did not click in my brain until like halfway through. I'm like, oh, that's the exact same house that was in X. But yeah, I do agree. It is a slow, it is more of a slower burn, but I just got to say, just like the opening credits and like the aesthetic of this film, it really just set the mood. It felt vintage. It felt like this was something that would have been made maybe about, I would say, possibly like a decade ago. Like, this looks like one of those like vintage, like early 2000 movies that will probably age very, very well. It's a very vibrant color palette as well. Not too bright as well, of course, with it being in New Zealand with the lush green fields and whatnot. But you said it was a character study. Can you elaborate on that? Because like, do you just mean as in more, it just gives Pearl more of a backstory as to why or how she ends up in the movie X?
It just dives completely into Pearl and her mental state and what makes her tick and what drives her to become this monster of a person. And it all starts with it being on this farm and her mother pushing her to stay on the farm and take care of her very sick dad. And she just kind of breaks and she thinks she's a star. She thinks she has the X factor, just like Maxine. I liked that callback there. But yeah, it's just, she just nailed this character.
Okay, yeah, I see what you mean there. I just wasn't sure what you meant by character study, but I think that is a really good a good observation because, you know, obviously this movie does not work without Mia Goth, as you said before. I mean, the supporting characters all did a fantastic job. It is about it's kind of that classic story of a farm girl who, or just a person in general who is, you know, of that age. Like we already know by the beginning of the movie that she is, she's already married to Howard.
I only get a little glimpse of Howard at the end.
Yeah, for sure. Oh man, Howard. Oh, Howard. I was like, Howard, he's gonna be. I was hoping we would see him, but yeah, we see this woman who, you know, is longing for a life outside of being a farm girl. You know, the Spanish flu is kind of, you know, sweeping the nation as of this moment. And I feel like it was very relatable to our time now that we are still within a pandemic in and of itself, but it was very relatable on that level. You know, just seeing Mia Goth like wearing a straight up like cotton like linen mask like into town, making sure that she does not catch the virus that is spreading through the country, and her trying to make a better life for herself. And we do see that she is a bit unstable, but of course, you know, saying a bit is more of like an understatement. But we start to see Pearl become more unhinged, and like you said, you know, we kind of go into her psyche, especially with that super long monologue, which I thought was fantastic. And we start to see how Pearl begins to think, you know, with her violent nature, her violent behavior, especially with her mother kind of calling her out on that. And, you know, it's kind of like she's grown up because she is married. She technically is an adult, but she has this like child state of mind where if she doesn't get what she wants, that's when she snaps. And it's a whole psyche type situation going on. I wish I could go into a little bit deeper, but overall, I just want to say that I thought it was fantastic. Like I loved how Ty West definitely has this love for horror, clearly, and this definitely felt like an old school horror movie, much like X, but this felt more like there's a few kills in this movie. There's, I believe, 4 in total. And we'll talk about those in spoilers, but 4 kills in total. And then, so yeah, four characters total. Sorry, I had to like think there for a second. I was like, is it 4? Yeah, it's definitely 4. But you know, they're kind of sporadically throughout, but I can't say they're necessarily like killed in a like special way. They kind of just get nixed, but
yeah, it doesn't have the same effect that X had as far as like clever or cool kills. There was one, the projectionist, but
yeah. But like we said, you know, it's not really about the kills in this movie. Like obviously we see how Pearl becomes a vicious killer, but it's more about the backstory of Pearl and her longing for a life outside of her farm, and her obviously wanting to please her parents, but her parents aren't, or especially her mother is not being necessarily supportive of her, calling her a failure, you know, saying that she like needs to stay here and take care of her father and, you know, live within their means. And it kind of just gets to her and she snaps. So yeah, overall, I thought this was an amazing movie. Definitely top. I'm trying to think if this is like my favorite horror movie of the year. We still have a few more to go for sure, but it's definitely up there within, honestly, I would say within the top 3. for sure. But Devin, I feel like we're getting into the spoiler section. I've been rambling here for a second. So ladies and gentlemen, that is your first spoiler warning for Pearl. Again, that is your second spoiler warning for Pearl. So if you haven't seen it, definitely watch this in theaters. It deserves all the love in the world. And then when Maxine comes out, watch that. And if you haven't watched X yet, definitely watch that as well, because this is shaping up to be one of my favorite horror trilogies. Honestly, right next to Fear Street, for sure. But so we'll go through the kill count really quick here, and then we'll kind of give our final thoughts and skedaddle out of here. So for the kill count, we have Pearl's mother and father, and then the man that she cheated on Howard with. I'm blanking on his name. I do apologize.
It's just the projectionist.
The projectionist. He seemed like a very upright, nice kind of fellow for the most part. There's a few kind of weird vibes I was getting there for a moment, but the fourth kill is her sister-in-law, Howard's sister. So, man, it was actually kind of crazy to like, oh, Howard has a sister, and it's like, I don't think he ever mentioned that.
They are very, very rich and well off, apparently, and he chooses to stay on the farm life. Kind of adds more dimension to his character.
Well, I wonder if he decided to stay, or if it was who was watching who in that Pearl Howard situation. But yeah, no, I definitely know what you mean there. But yeah, overall, the four kills that we got, though they were kind of like spread throughout the movie altogether. We did get a few teasers of the alligator, with Pearl's father as well. I thought she was just gonna, dive him on in there. I was like, oh man, the alligator's back.
That alligator's eaten nice over these years.
Very much so, man. It's been crazy, but yeah, those are pretty much the four kill counts. And then of course we do see Howard up here towards the end of the movie for a brief second. So I felt like the movie was longer than what it was. I actually didn't check the runtime. Did you?
Hour 42.
Yeah, I didn't check it before going into the movie theater, but how was your crowd? Like, did you see this by yourself, or what are your thoughts about the kills and Pearl's violent nature?
Well, I went to the Solon AMC, so I was the only one in the theater, like always. That one is
barren.
That one's always empty, so it's definitely got some perks to it. It is a bad theater overall, but it is nice to have a theater to yourself. Just hang out and relax. But I just want to talk about the last 20 minutes or so of this movie. Everything just hits the fan, and that's when you really just start to see all the cracks showing. And that's when everything comes out. That you mentioned that monologue earlier that Pearl gives to the sister-in-law. That was insane. That felt like 5 minutes straight of just her pouring her soul out. And then there's a couple of really interesting edits after she kills the sister-in-law, where she's kind of just dancing around and feeding the alligator her head that's been chopped off, and it just kind of looks trippy and interesting. And then the very end, when Howard shows up and the camera just stays on Pearl while the credits are rolling it was probably 5 minutes straight, and she is smiling and laughing and crying all at once. And it's one of the most insane things I've ever seen an actor do. Like, I don't know how. I need to know if that was one take, if they did multiple takes, how she stayed in character. I just need answers.
I was actually thinking the same thing. I was like, I wonder how many takes it took for them to get that towards the very ending credits there, where
like to be able to smile for that long, that hard, like that's like that hard of a smile, like keeping everything up the whole time. It's just insane.
I thought something was actually going to happen after, because like within my theater, there was maybe about 7 of us total. But I will say, even though it was a small crowd, like everyone enjoyed it. Like everyone was just like so glued on it. I was actually kind of relieved that I wasn't the only person who was watching this, because I'm like, oh my gosh, like they have to have seen X, right? Like that's the only reason why you probably are going to go watch this movie. But yeah, my my theater experience was amazing. You know, people reacted during certain during certain moments, and it was just an overall great time. But yeah, I wonder how long it took for them to do that that final shot.
It's painful.
It looked very painful, but I would say that I thought something else was coming after. Like there was going to be maybe just like an after scene or something like that. Unfortunately, there wasn't, but I still thought that was an amazing way to end the movie. And then, of course, if you stayed until the very, very end of the credits, we got the Maxine teaser trailer, which just says coming soon.
Set in 1985, I believe.
I believe so, yeah. All I'm saying is if Maxine comes out this year, that will be insane. Like, I mean, we've got the Fear Street trilogy, I think, what was it, last year? But, I mean, obviously those were like 3 movies planned. Those were filmed back to back to back. But, and those like kind of released like weekly, but like it's still awesome. Like, I mean, A24 pumps out a lot of stuff. So I'm very excited to see Maxine. I think Pearl, as far as my final thoughts really quick, I think Pearl is a amazing prequel that definitely gives us more backstory to Pearl. And of course, Mia Goth plays the old lady of Pearl in X as well, so she's literally everywhere. And you know, I'm excited for the sequel because you know we got to see what Maxine is up to. But I'm very interested for Maxine because she was not the antagonist of obviously of X and or Pearl. So I wonder how Ty West is going to handle that movie. Is it going to be more of a slasher? Is she going to be the antagonist of that movie as well? We'll just have to wait and see. But Devin, what are your final thoughts on Pearl?
Yeah, overall, like I mentioned before, Mia Goth is just, she's a star, and it's very obvious if you watch this movie especially. She was great in X, but this one is just, she just takes over and just does it all. Like it's amazing to watch. She took what could have otherwise been kind of a bland, I wouldn't say bland, but kind of a too slow of a burn, a horror movie, and she turns it into something that's special and very watchable. So yeah, I'd probably give this one like an 86 overall. She really bumps up the score quite a bit just because of the performance and what she gave, and that last shot is definitely the one that's going to stick with you the most. That's going to be the memorable one. That smile is just haunting.
Pearly white teeth. For my score as well, I'm actually going to I would give this an 86 as well. You know, it's the only issue is that I felt like, you know, it was a bit more of a slow burn, but again, that is on a first viewing. I feel like on a second viewing, now that, you know, we've watched it, we know what happens going in. It might honestly just breeze by a little bit faster for us as well. But, you know, that's not necessarily a bad thing because, you know, you have to learn about this character within an hour and 42 minutes. So, you know, you have to understand her home life, her upbringing, and now that we know she's German, so, or at least her mother's German. So we have to kind of understand her backstory in order for her to, you know, she's always just had this violent nature. I mean, living on a farm, there's not much you can do instead of, you know, just killing small animals and then working your way up to humans, I guess. But
enjoying yourself with a scarecrow.
That too. And yeah, I mean, it's very, I mean, there are a lot of sexual moments in this movie as well. Obviously within X, there was more, you know, of what was going on, but the theme still carries over. But yeah, I think this is an extraordinary prequel for X. I actually got that from the poster, but it still holds true. So that concludes our review of Pearl. Again, if you have not seen X, I would definitely recommend watching that first before watching Pearl. It's not that Pearl necessarily gives anything away, because I don't think it does, but it just makes more sense to watch X first and then getting the backstory on Pearl, and then of course moving to Maxine. Much like, you know, people watch the Star Wars trilogy, they usually start with the original, then they do the prequels, and then they do the sequels instead of doing chronologically. I do want to, when this eventually comes out on Blu-ray, I do want to watch them in chronological order to see if that makes if it still fits the same way. We'll just have to kind of just wait and see until Maxine comes out. But I definitely want to see this again. Hopefully I can see it again by this weekend, but we'll just have to wait and see. But again, I know I'm a little long-winded here, and I do apologize. That is our review for Pearl. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you've liked what you've heard on today's episode, make sure to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast platform of choice, and make sure to share an episode of our podcast with a friend, whether it be your mother, your brother, your lover, whoever it may be. Make sure to share an episode of the Film Optix podcast with a movie lover in need. And really quick, before we go, what is coming up next on our podcast? What is out right now? We have our House of the Dragon, aka Hot D, episodes 1 through 5 reviews that are up. They're all spoiler free. We just dropped our episode 5 review, so definitely go listen to that, as well as our She-Hulk episode 5 review. We have episodes 1 through 5 on the podcast for you guys to listen to as well. And if you're looking for a little bit more horror in your life, you can definitely check out our Barbarian review that we just dropped a few days ago. That is now also playing in theaters. So you got a lot to watch in theaters this weekend. You got Barbarian, you got Woman King, and you got Pearl. And you got to go watch X. I believe that is on video on demand. I don't believe it's streaming anywhere. Or if you're a physical Blu-ray collector, you can pick it up there. And really quick, what is on deck for our podcast? We're going to be covering Rogue One, a Star Wars story, getting ready for Andor, as well as we're going to be dropping our Avatar: The Last Airbender Book 3 Fire review. And we're going to see Don't Worry, Darling a little bit earlier than most. So we're definitely going to try to have probably just a spoiler-free review on the day that Don't Worry Darling drops. So we're doing a little bit of batch recording here for you guys because we love you guys so much. So I know I've been talking up a storm here for a while, so I'm going to shut up. And we hope you guys have a great day, and we'll see you guys next time. And that's a wrap for today. Thank you all for listening. And if you enjoy the show, leave us a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And follow us on Instagram and Twitter to stay in the know. That was Devin. My name is Christian. We'll see you guys in Texas.
Peace.